Hello.
Hi, Kim. Welcome everyone to the Equal Equity Festival. So this is our second session today, and we will be having a series of conversation with lots of different people across the week. We also have one tonight at 7 p.m. So thank you everyone for joining. Equal Equity is a project in partnership with the National Youth Agency to capacity build and support Black and people of colour organisations and youth workers as well. So thank you for being here, Kim. How are you doing?
Thank you very much for having me. Very excited to be here and obviously speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been great. So Kim is the co-founder and also co-CEO of Equal Education. So I just wanted to say hello and introduce you very briefly. Would you like to just give us an insight into your journey, how Equal Education, I guess, came to be here?
Sure. Equal Education started as a very organic project, and what we do is provide specialist tutoring programs for what I would argue are the most vulnerable children in England. So children that are in care, children that are adopted, and children with special educational needs. And this really came about because of my deep desire to tackle education inequality in the UK. And I, at the time, was working for local authorities and became quite frustrated with, sadly, the number of children that were unable to self-regulate their emotions, and as a result were actually excluded from school, whether this manifested in a behavioural issue. So one extreme example might be a chair going across the classroom. And then actually ending up with quite serious consequences for that child. So I actually thought there's something here about children not being able to self-regulate their emotions. What they really need is a bit more specialist one-to-one support. So just having that adult sitting with them, really understanding what's going on, but also then helping them to achieve that. Yes, whilst they might not be in mainstream education, it's not to say that this child can't still achieve. So that was my plight on my side, coupled with my co-founder, who at the time was a science teacher, but also doing a PhD in chemical engineering in ice cream, believe it or not, with Unilever.
Wow.
And
ice cream.
So it's food processing. Yeah. So
wow.
He was tasked with actually, how can you really look at the processes? It's very process driven. And he was also tutoring with an agency where those children went to an independent school. And he said to me, Kim, I do feel like an elaborate babysitter. These kids are so smart. They've got parents that love them, and they're investing all this money into their education. And I said, your skills are needed on the opposite end of the spectrum, where actually sometimes children don't have that level of social mobility. So from those conversations came along Equal Education, and here we are in our 10th year.
Wow, amazing. 10 years. I can imagine just the growth, the impact within those 10 years, probably the ups and downs, the challenges.
Absolutely. I wonder if it would be helpful to maybe explore some of those. I'm more than happy to share those trials and tribulations. I guess whenever you kind of set something up like this, you never expect this passion project to get to the size where it is. And I think some of the learning curves is actually, how do you create a culture? And how do you convey that culture so that you can get the right team on board? I think what's really important for us is our tutor community. So we have 600 teachers across the UK that deliver this really meaningful work with these students. But actually, because they are across the UK, how do we then continue with the communication and make sure everyone feels involved? And sometimes that can be really tricky, because they are such an integral part in what we do, but also making sure the support's there for them because they are going out to work on their own. Coupled with, this hybrid model now, when we think about it, previously we all had such a conservative view that we should all be in the office. And actually now we're exploring that hybrid model, and I'm sure there's been research about this previously, people probably are more productive when they haven't got someone across the table hearing someone else's meeting or phone call. But just to take it back to culture, that sometimes learning happens via osmosis. when you are seated next to your colleagues, for example, and hearing the conversations that they're having and looking at the style of their communication. So that's been quite a challenge.
Wow, I can imagine.
Yeah, and also Milka, our model was in person. I had quite a conservative view, and I thought actually the best way for that child to learn was having that tutor seated next to them, teaching them. But this global pandemic has showed us actually we can do things online, and so we've adopted that hybrid model, and that's worked well. But it really does vary on the needs of our students. So I will caveat that. I think some of the other challenges is when you set something like this up, you might not have a legal background. There are so many other kind of specialisms that you need to pull in. That's legal, that's HR, governance, forming a board. So I've been quite relentless in approaching people. So, and you know they care, because it's human nature to say, actually, how can you use your expertise for good? So that's probably where we are.
Wow. I'm just thinking of like all the children that were, I guess, in a way, had no choice but to study online. So I'm just thinking about some of the children with maybe complex needs. How has that been for them? And I guess the digital way of, I guess, communicating as well as learning. I did teach English online actually, but it was for mostly children and adults actually in like Japan, Taiwan, so like across to different time zones. And it was really interesting. I actually really enjoyed the online sessions.
That's really warming to hear. And actually it's worked really well for some students, particularly students who are quite shy in their demeanor, and they don't necessarily want a teacher or tutor sat next to them. And so for those students, it's worked really well. Although we have had children from one end of the spectrum for special educational needs and disabilities, actually it's been really hard to look at a screen for that long. Or children that have severe anxiety and therefore don't want to turn their camera on. But actually it also then doubles up as a kind of a check-in. Actually, are these children okay? Almost like a welfare check-in, like how is that student doing? What's their emotional state like? What's their well-being like? Because to have the world almost put on pause when you're in your formative years with your peers, you learn off your peers. It's I think it's been really, really challenging, and I'm absolutely amazed at how resilient children are. It's quite incredible.
It really is, but I think it's been like I guess the impact. Even like I was thinking of welfare in terms of even like the space that I'm just thinking of the teachers having to do sessions online, but also being aware of something might happen in that home. And I can imagine the change of I guess safeguarding as well within that context.
You're absolutely right. And actually what we saw that became very apparent was in this digital age that we reside in this 21st century, the lack of digital devices and Wi-Fi that was available to children. And that was quite harrowing for us, because we don't think it's a luxury. I think it's an absolute necessity. And the curriculum's changing. The careers are changing. Careers that probably once, not for you, Milka, but I'm probably quite a bit older than you, that were the traditional careers, but actually now we're looking at careers like coding and, what's digital literacy look like. So I think it's really important that we are exploring that. We applied for a grant and managed to roll out some iPads. But we chose iPads because actually we didn't want to open up Pandora's box so that children could have access to untoward websites. And as you said rightly, safeguarding is so important for these children, but so is learning. So it's just finding that real balance.
And in the online space as well, I think I think there's lots of strengths of online learning, 100%. And I'm just thinking of all the teachers that you were saying around the culture as well. They also are probably homeschooling their own children or looking after children because schools were closed. So I can imagine the double, I guess, pressure of teaching being their job, but also having to be teachers to their own families and people around them as well.
I completely agree with you. And actually also I mean, that's something probably that they've been doing, irrespective, I'm sure, even before the pandemic. But what I really respect is a newfound love and respect for teachers, when actually parents or other or guardians, whoever it may be, have had to step in and do some of that teaching role, that fully understand the complexities and actually how challenging that can be. And actually you have a different relationship, right, when you're the teacher to when you're a parent or a caregiver, should I say.
Yeah.
And so actually how do you then separate the two? So yeah, I think it's been an absolute testimony to the incredible tutors that have shown that resilience.
Amazing. And the start, the support from the structure and the organization itself. I think it's not easy to be, I'm a freelancer, so I'm imagining everybody doing their bit, trying to stay connected and have support. So that's incredible that you were able to support 600 people, did you say?
Yes, you're right. And it's really trying to hold kind of these online webinars, sending out newsletters, trying to really say, here's some resources, is that helpful? And just call us, more than anything, talk to us. I think that's really important that we're there for that support.
Amazing. That's incredible. I'm just thinking around the organization's name. So we're Equal Equity, and we're the conversation around equity. And I was just curious around your experience. I know you have been within the educational sector. You've also been a trustee. So just understanding from your perception, why Equal Education was the name of the organization, and was that linked to anything around equity within that context of education?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, without a doubt. And I think it very much says it in its name that I think I touched on this previously, but a real deep desire to tackle educational inequality in the UK. So in essence, if you like, we have taken the Oxford and Cambridge model of one-to-one tuition, reverse engineered it, and brought it back down to people that aren't able to access social mobility in the same way. And I think that's really important. And equally, as you said, as is equity, actually, and just really that desire to close that education gap, and to prevent children from falling by the wayside. And I think for me, it's not just about, get your GCSEs or get your A levels. It's actually whatever achievement you've made, that is absolutely fantastic. And how do we celebrate that? How do we build upon that? And all the other things that come with that your confidence and how that will permeate into other aspects of what you do, and learning how to study. And I think a lot of it is really building that self-confidence and belief. So I think that's really where that stems from.
Amazing. And I think my experience has probably been mainly in alternative provisions and prisons and community and lots of other sectors. But it's just interesting how even within the prison sector, in terms of within prisons, education is still something that, is pushed, in the sense, even like having basic English or maths, or even just other, like I know people that have completed their degrees whilst in prison. So there's definitely a focus for people in prison. I guess, again, the people in prison, like you say about the children, they're probably the most disadvantaged, or probably the most that have complex needs. A lot of people in prison have been in care and have experienced trauma. And I'm not saying everyone, it's not a blanket statement, but there are those statistics around mental health and people in prison as well. So I guess the most vulnerable people as well are in prison. So it's interesting. That's also a big factor in prisons, like education and getting something, whether it's a barbering qualification or whether it's food hygiene and food tech kind of practical skills around food. Just some sort of skills and education is definitely something that I've seen as well within the prison sector as well.
No, you're absolutely right. And actually, we commissioned a study with Pro Bono Economics to look at what the saving would be to the taxpayer if we educated at this young age, and the cost saving to the criminal justice system, to the universal credit, to all of these other factors. Obviously, we looked at it from 20 years, because you'd have to have longevity in order to see this saving, and as you can imagine, this one's into the millions. Without a doubt, and that's why it's so important that we support here to say, actually, look, your start point, it doesn't determine your end point, and that actually, irrespective of what may have happened, can be anything that you want to be. Melka, I think you might be on mute.
Yes, I was.
We're back.
What was the one thing that has kept you going within the 10 years? I can see it's your passion, because you come alive when you're speaking about education. I read body language. But what is it, one thing that what's the one thing that's kept you going for the last 10 years?
That's a great question. So in the office, sometimes my role is now to make quite difficult decisions. So I keep a empty chair next to me. I was allowed to sit in this chair, because when I have to make these decisions, I imagine a really vulnerable child looking at me, thinking, do you have my best interests at heart when you're making these decisions? So I think that really helps. But also collating our case studies. So conversations that we have, hearing that student's voice, I want to say the student, and also their caregivers, to hear actually how it's been really wonderful, because obviously they know the children really well, students. So to see them at a start point, the middle, and then the end, I think that has been quite magical. So lots of case studies, lots of impact. And just continuing to really advocate, I think, which is
That's amazing. You have a physical chair. I think that's like really powerful. I'm like listening to you, and I'm like, wow. Imagine if everybody did that. Every teacher, every decision maker around young people's lives, they had something that could physically keep them in check. I guess keep them thinking about whoever the person is they're supporting, keeping those at the heart of all the decisions and all the conversations. That's really powerful. Wow. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it makes it feel more tangible.
Wow. Do you think there's anything? There's probably 100 things, but if there was one thing or a few things that could support people within the context of education, is there anything that you think is really important, that you think will be, you've like you said, you've reverse engineered what Cambridge and Oxford are doing, and making sure that they're supporting people, but you're giving people one-to-one, I guess, having that one-to-one time. That's definitely something that you've already mentioned. Is there anything else that you think is really important for young people or students?
I think what we do is if you stripped it away, we put in that one adult that really cares, but we're using education and to get them qualifications. So I think there's something about that role model, and that consistency and that care, I think, is absolutely life-changing for some young people. It can be potentially a scary and vulnerable time, trying to find your identity and sense of self and place in the world, but to possibly have that support, I think, is absolutely wonderful. I think a lot more needs to be done around examinations and about the kind of benchmarks, and then there needs to be more kind of equality, but also measuring different levels of success and not just academia. And I think that's really important, whether that stems from creativity to the leaders in students. So I think there needs to be a much wider kind of spectrum, but also the digital skills, which is so important.
100%. Tech is where we are going as a society as well, and there's not enough, I guess, Black and people of color within those spaces, as well. So how do we encourage, like you said, having spaces and places for young people to explore lots of different jobs and lots of different careers as well?
And I think on a wider piece,
is there
sorry, I interrupted you,
No,
but I'm just going to say on a wider piece, I think how are we also mindful of the unconscious bias that can also creep in, and actually how do we keep that at the forefront of our mind to better support children and young people, and also just to hear their voices. They're so bright. It's got so much to offer. How are we making sure that, because learning is, it's a two-way process. So I think that's really imperative, to hear the voice as much as we can.
It's really important, and also just making sure that they're, like you said, if everyone was keeping them at the heart of everything, that could be the difference in terms of the trajectory of that young person's life.
Absolutely.
And there's lots of statistics around education through to prison pipeline. Again, don't really like the language, but these are the kind of statistics that we're seeing, and specifically for Black children and specifically Black children in terms of the exclusion rates in schools. And those students might have lots of needs, and they're not necessarily getting the assessments in time or the plans in time as well. So many factors in terms of what actually happens as well for those students.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, recently we saw something in the media about how a student was unfairly treated, and we see this a lot, and that's why I think there needs to be more conversations, more addressing our own biases and our unconscious biases about actually what's our perception, and let's have these uncomfortable conversations. Yes, they might be, but let's have these respectful challenge with colleagues or whoever it might be, because it's only through that actually there will be systemic change.
Yeah, definitely agree. How, just for you, in terms of your plans for equal education, where it's going, what's your vision for the next, maybe even for the next year? It's hard to plan 5 years with a pandemic and COVID and all the uncertainties.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Definitely to continue to help more beneficiaries, I think would be absolutely wonderful, to continue to measure our impact, and to see that we are impactful and we are really supporting the students, but also then to actually look to see how we really build on our tutor community, because I think, as they say, it takes a village. And so I think that's really important, that those like-minded professionals and people are on board. We are currently looking, it's funny you mentioned the criminal justice system, but looking at a piece of work out in Melbourne in Australia, actually, to work with some students whose parents have sadly been incarcerated, and so therefore actually to support them. So that's a really exciting project that's on the pipeline. So, and just kind of see how actually, but also then best practice to learn from other professionals around the world, because we can certainly become a little bit London centric and think that we sometimes have all the answers, and we might not.
Australia is a really good example. I think, I'm not sure about, I remember when I was working around domestic abuse, they had lots of initiatives and lots of things that were, I guess, a bit more advanced in terms of the way that they would, their systems and the way they're operating. Similarly with Canada as well, again, US, some not all examples, but some sectors or some systems in terms of they're a little bit more ahead of us in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've definitely seen that, and I think the ed tech market has definitely been dominated by that. It's funny, I sat on a round table last month, and we were discussing ed tech about narrowing the attainment gap for vulnerable learners. And whilst I'm completely for this, and I believe that technology is the way forward, I'm also sometimes become a bit concerned about the benchmark, and that actually how we're making sure this is accessible for all children, for example, with SEND, or perhaps a child that has extreme sensory needs, for example, are they able to even access this wonderful piece of ed tech software, for example? So accessibility is a big one that's on my mind at the moment as well. So
I think accessibility is really important. It's I think it's just trying to balance the advancement of technology, which is great in so many different aspects, but also the most deprived, like, you know, when the pandemic happened, the most deprived communities and young people weren't able to have access to, you know, a laptop or computer or internet. And within that context, would then not be able to follow their educational, I guess, you know, their education. Then of course that would put pressure on parents. It's just a cycle, right?
You're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right. And we and it was great that we managed to get these iPads out to children. In fact, Vodafone actually did a report on that, actually, just about closing that digital divide, which is really wonderful. But unfortunately, it became such apparent that there's so many that are without the devices, but also then the you know, do they have the space that will allow them to access education in a way that they can be creative and actually sit down and think about their education? And I think sadly we've seen that that's not the case for all children. But then actually, how do we facilitate that? And we're mindful of that. So it really is. I really kind of think of it as a student in the middle, and you've got this whole kind of solar system of everything else that goes around them. So and how imperative that is, and just not to be done in a silo.
I remember I was working with organizations and looking for laptops, looking for charities that were offering even like laptops that could be fixed, just trying to meet and again, like from a prison perspective, people were being released with no technology, couldn't access, you know, housing, couldn't access most of the services because most of the services went online. So I guess it does have an impact on young people, you know, people that are leaving prison. The most vulnerable people in society, I guess, is we probably need to get some, you know, Apple to sponsor you. We need to get some good sponsorship.
You're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right with that.
Social corporate, you know, responsibility.
Relationship. Absolutely. And actually, I know, whilst the DFE did roll out devices, I think we were quite concerned, given the nature of the children we work with, that I didn't want to give out devices that actually there might be a particular game that has a chat room feature, and actually how do we continue to safeguard, you know, all the things that you kind of really need to think about. So, and I'm not an expert on apps, and there are so many out there that we actually did a piece of work. It's a minefield. We did a piece of work with some really bright minds at UCL to kind of look at some great apps, and they did some research and put some great learning apps together. So more than happy to share that if anyone wants to take a look at that, by all means. But it was just great to see actually what's out there.
Amazing. And is there anything, I guess, for you, equal education, what support do you need? I guess, you know, we're doing a call out at the moment. What support do you need? Is it more, I'm just thinking of like lots of the challenges. A lot of organizations, this might not be true for you, but a lot of the organizations that we've spoken to that are also on the incubator have said access to funding as being something that was quite a big hurdle for their organizations. Is that something that's come up for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the real test of time in terms of funding has been getting through COVID. So anyone that's managed to do that, I absolutely bow down, and I'm humbled, and congratulations, because that is really, really challenging and draining, like, you know, emotionally, physically, all of that. To get through that is wonderful. I think I touched on this briefly, but one of our challenges is we're an accredited partner on the National Tutoring Programme. We never thought that central government would recognise tutoring the way they have and put on this catch-up tuition, which is brilliant. So for us, it's really getting like-minded tutors, qualified teachers to come on board and work with us. But this obviously then does drive up the cost for everyone, and I think people are seeing that. And I think one of the challenges is how one's pricing themselves alongside kind of market rates and inflation. And I think that's something to be really mindful of, and does link into funding and grants, etc.
Okay. Some more staff, I guess. More staff.
Yes, absolutely. So if you know any qualified teachers, please send them my way.
Anybody watching that's a qualified teacher, please. Do get in touch with Kim. Is there anything else that you, in terms of for your organization, that has been maybe a barrier that, I guess, any support that you would need going forward?
Yeah, I think what's really important to kind of know is when you do need funding when you're in your earlier years. Now, I myself have been a beneficiary social mobility, but it also we don't all have the, particularly as a person of colour, we don't have those networks, we don't have access to those fundings or that family office or whoever it might be, or a particular charity, and it's not until you've really built what you're building that actually then people say, oh, I can see that you're creating a bit of noise in this space, can I know more? But actually probably the time where you need that support, it really isn't there. So how can we really open up, and this links back into the equity and equality for all, and actually how do we support all charities, particularly those that are Black led or people of colour, and how important that is, and to really kind of make sure that there is equality there. So I think that's been really interesting. It's certainly a piece of work that I really want to get involved in. Wouldn't want anyone to kind of experience that more so than it has happened in the past, should I say.
And in terms of the teachers, are they distributed across London and across the UK? Is there I guess more hubs in specific places than others? I'm just curious around, I guess the UK has lots of different spaces and places that are mostly deprived. I'm wondering if those are actually everyone's online, most of it. Actually, you've said it's a hybrid model, so it's
absolutely
accessible for everybody.
But also, no, you're absolutely right. And we are also delivering in person as well. And there are concentrated areas. So I'd say probably Birmingham, Norfolk, Thurrock and Reading is probably where there's a huge demand at present. And but teachers nationwide is definitely something that we would be really happy to hear from teachers across the UK.
Okay.
And just because of the very nature of children in care being moved around, as I'm sure people know, and this is why we need to make sure that we've got a teacher that's ready to go and ready to work with that student.
Wow. And is there support for the teachers? I'm just thinking of, I guess, everyone's well-being. Is there, I don't know, do you have like a well-being day or residential? I'm just kind of throwing stuff out there. Just thinking about
absolutely. Yeah, about the tutor community. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is something that we really are in the process of building, putting together a yearly calendar of training. And I guess what really differentiates us is the fact that actually there's always someone on the end of a phone.
Wow.
So call us, have a conversation with us. We really appreciate that the teachers are going out. It is a one-to-one model. So sometimes, therefore, it can feel a little bit isolating. But actually, we are here in terms of that tutor community, the newsletters, the resources, the webinars, and then other events. So I'll ask teachers to come and speak, to really showcase the incredible work that they're doing, because the teachers that we have, I guess, are really resilient. You know, you might, as I'm sure a lot of people know, you get this kind of norming kind of process, you know, whether that's an adult or a student, and it's really kind of testing that relationship. So I'm some really resilient tutors indeed.
Wow, incredible. I think I had a tutor for maths in just for GCSEs, and I remember it was so close to my exams, but it was really helpful. I remember that. That's one thing I do remember. So, and he would come to my house, and it was like, this is the session, and that was like only for like probably a few months, but it was really helpful. And I remember him because he spent the time, and it was that one-to-one support.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it does make a difference. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it make you laugh, because I equally, when I talk about being fortunate and a beneficiary of social mobility, had a maths tutor, and I recall him saying to my mum, I don't need to tutor your son anymore because I think he needs an A-level tutor. Bearing in mind he hadn't done his GCSEs at the time. He said, your daughter, on the other hand, is going to need a lot of sessions. Oh, great, thanks. but it's so beneficial to have that one teacher, and there's not that embarrassment like you might get in a classroom. what, asking a question, is this silly? Will other people know the answer? Should I know the answer?
Yeah.
And all the doubt that comes with that is somehow eliminated by just having that person next to you.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. Is there, I guess, how do you look after yourself? It's probably my next question. We spoke about self-well-being, but
Yeah.
how do you look after yourself? I know you're doing a lot. You're making incredible impact on staff and the young people, students, should I say? How do you look after yourself as a co-CEO, co-founder?
It's a really good question. I think you're absolutely right. I think everyone's at risk of burnout, and particularly when we were working from home consistently. Actually, there wasn't a differentiation. Is at the end of the working day, I'm working on my dining table. So actually, there's a tendency to just keep going on and on. So I think it's about actually I've learned it's okay to say no. Actually, and I'm afraid I don't have the capacity, and I think that's been really helpful. I also evoke a childlike energy. I have a mini trampoline, which keeps me very young at heart, and it's very good fun. So that's very good for my well-being.
Kim, I might need to come round.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. So yeah, I think, exercise, which just gives that mental clarity. And I know it sounds cliche, and I'm sure we've all heard it, but it really is. It really is. It supports well-being more than anything.
I started hot yoga, and I think it was good for my body, but it was good for my mind. I could slow down my thoughts and my spinning thoughts of like lots of the projects I'm doing. And I'm definitely,
I can absolutely believe that.
Advocate for exercise. In my past life, I was a personal trainer. I don't like to claim it because the pandemic happened and things have changed.
Absolutely.
Is there anything in terms of how can people support your work? So I know definitely trained teachers, please do get in touch. Potentially anything else I might have missed? And then
no, I think that would be absolutely wonderful. If anyone does know any qualified teachers, follow us on social media, give us some love and some support. Please reach out. Always welcome to have conversations in this space, even if it's just to pick brains and to say, actually, what would you do in this scenario? I think I go back to a community, and it takes a village. Let's have these conversations. And I think the more people that are joined up and talking, the better we kind of support one another. I have a fantastic internal team of 14 really experienced teachers and other professions that would be really welcome and open to having conversations.
Brilliant. And are you thinking of making, I guess, equal education global? Is that on the
absolutely
model being, a big, wide, global impact?
I mean, that would be the absolute vision. Absolutely. Wow. I think I have to say, there's so much work to be done here in the UK. And I think that's been kind of the primary focus. Actually, what can we do here, and really take what's worked well across the globe, but also really learn from what's working really well across the globe. But absolutely, I think that would be the ultimate vision.
I'll get qualified. I'll get qualified.
Come on board. Come on board, indeed.
But no, it's brilliant that they're actually qualified teachers. I've seen a lot of tutoring agencies where they're not. So it's really interesting, the disparity between, I don't know, what would be the level of, it's the conversation around can you teach if you're not a qualified teacher, and what does that look like? And the safety of having someone that's actually qualified as well, I can imagine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there are some incredible charities and social enterprises that use volunteers to professionals, all kind of, I guess, safer recruitment checks that happen, and undergraduates as well. But I think for us, it's really about knowing your subject specialism. And actually, this is what you do day in, day out, and then also coupled with our attachment and trauma training, to really support that teacher to teach. So you're absolutely right, and I think it's, for us, it's, we really value this model, and one-to-one too, because I think there's a lot of merit in that.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm just thinking of so people can actually follow you and actually, you know, connect with you on LinkedIn. It will just be your name, right?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Please do.
And then Twitter as well. So you've got Equal Education UK as well on Twitter and Facebook as well.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you.
So yeah, follow Kim, follow the journey, follow the next steps of what Equal Education will do. And yeah, any qualified teachers, definitely message Kim.
Please do.
And yeah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for just being here. And it's just been really nice to see things from an educational lens. All these sessions have been great for me because I see it from different angles. I see the conversation and, you know, the conversation around equity, equality, from the various angles of various work and various people that are coming on for the next few weeks as well, actually, for this week anyway. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, Kim.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for being here. Have a good day. Peace. Take care. We also have tonight at 7 p.m. for another live. Take care. Bye.